Hey channel, Fernando from SkyFi Audio. I've got here a few products from DS Audio, which is a company that is incredibly innovative in the analog space, and I've been looking forward to trying out some of their stuff. So I got my hands on a DS E3 optical cartridge system, which is the coolest thing I've seen in a while. I also have their eccentricity detection stabilizer, another super innovative product. I know a few people have covered it, but I wanted to get my hands and share it with you. And then I've got their Ionizer, which removes static from the record surface really passively, which is kind of cool. I'm not going to go into deep review of these two products. I'm going to focus on the DS E3, which is their entry-level cartridge. And I'm also going to touch a bit on their head shell, the DS, I think 01 head shell, which is a beautiful piece. We sell it often with the Technics SL1200G. It fits beautifully, it's cosmetically stunning. So we're going to mount the cartridge. We're going to go over some very rough ideas of how to calibrate a cartridge. Now I don't have a full-blown setup here. I've got some limited tools, which might be relevant for you guys if you're going to tackle a calibration on this SL1200 yourself. Then we'll play some records, and when we're done with that, we're going to move this turntable back into its proper home, which is the room next to this one, where I've got some Sonos Fabers and a Technics integrated amplifier. So we're going to get started. Shouldn't be too long of a video. Let's go. DS Audio has 6 cartridges in their lineup, all with matching Phono preamps. We're going to be tackling this one, the DS E3, which is their entry-level piece. It retails at $2,750, which is an interesting price point. And the fact that it also includes the Phono section, or the Phono preamp, which powers the cartridge, so it's almost a necessary thing that goes with it. Up from there, we've got the DS003, which uses a different cantilever and stylus. That's at $6,000, and the DSW3 at $15,000. And then from there, it gets pretty heavy in price. We're talking about the DS Master 3. It's somewhere in the $27,000 range, and then 60 and 67 grand accordingly. We don't have access to the top range here at SkyFi, so we're going to focus on these 3 guys here, specifically this one, the DS E3. Now it comes with the cartridge and the power supply / Phono preamp as a bundle, but you can also order them individually, which is kind of cool. Part of the reason you can get the cartridge all by itself is because there are in the market a few preamps already that have facilities for optical cartridges, including the Solution 757, this Esoteric, and a bunch of other ones. They're listed on the DS Audio website. There seems to be about 11 models right now. I'm sure they're adding more and more. And understand that it takes a very specific type of Phono preamp to be able to directly connect an optical cartridge. So you need to use either the included Phono section, or you need to have one of these preamps with it. Inside, DS Audio states that this is their 3rd generation optical mechanism, so you know that this is some, just released technology. It's been around for a bit. It does use an aluminum cantilever. That's what holds the stylus, and elliptical needle. And here's some specifications for the Equalizer, which is both the power supply and the Equalizer all built into one. Looking at specs, the signal output is a photoelectrical conversion, and that's the output from the cartridge itself. Channel separation is pretty good at 26 dBs, 7.7 grams, 70 millivolts. Again, this is not relevant for us since we're not going to be matching it or trying to match it to some other preamp. Cantilever is aluminum, and so is the body of the cartridge. And tracking force somewhere between 2 and 2.2 grams. And the cut on the diamond is an elliptical needle. And then some specs for the... So what is an optical cartridge? Well, it's just what it sounds like. Instead of using coils and a magnet, which is what a conventional moving coil cartridge uses, we're going to be using a light beam and the interruption of that light beam in order to generate a signal. Because it is light, and because we're not carrying, the very, very low voltage audio signals, it can do a much, much better job and a cleaner job at transferring the information from a record. It also results in a much lighter stylus or cantilever because we're not carrying a bunch of coils. A magnet isn't influencing the motion of this cantilever. We end up getting a much freer acting system. This is not an entirely new concept. Prior to the 1970s, there were some attempts at optical cartridges, but apparently LEDs really weren't there quite yet. So they had to use incandescent bulbs, and those generated too much heat. So this was essentially abandoned as a development channel as the CD became more popular. But a picture of what we're talking about here, the coils around the cantilever, left channel, right channel, and here we have the same cantilever but with the shading structure for left and right channels there. Great illustration showing the resistance from the magnetic forces being applied to a moving coil system. So we've got the magnet structure here, and as this vibrates, we've got some resistance there. And this is an overview or an exploited view of the optical system, left channel, right channel with the photo detectors. And now they've taken away one channel. We're just looking at the left channel for simplicity, and the shading plate that obstructs the light path. Here you can see the photo detector getting various amounts of light. And here we see the left channel operating independently of the right channel. And you can see why there's such a big mass difference, right? The copper structures around here, the coil windings around some sort of metal plate, and the super, super thin, low mass shading plate. This illustrates that we've got about 10 times less moving mass in the optical cartridge and zero magnetic resistance. This is the setup for the day. So I've got my trusty Technics SL1200G. Tons of videos on this, by the way, guys. I'll put links below. This is the bestseller from Technics. Comes in both 1200G and the 1210 black variation. It's got a bunch of cosmetic upgrades. It's got our in-house wood plinth, been branded. These we make custom, and you can find these on our website as well. It's got our Technics record weight, which is a really nice piece. It's just the right weight for Techniques and a great fit. We did a lot of investigative work to figure out what the best one was. And then this has a Sumiko Starling cartridge. This is our best-selling cartridge from Sumiko. So boron cantilever, beautiful piece, absolute great seller. It's about $1,800 and really a great fit for this. That's why we're here today. We're trying to figure out a really nice alternative to the Starling. Then in the back we've got a couple of things you can't see. We've got the Kimber cable power cord that we love and the set of Kimber cable TAC-CU interconnects with WT connectors. When you source an SL from us, there are all sorts of packages available, so you can kind of get everything in one shot. Oh, and lastly, we've got an acrylic cover. We're not a fan of hinged covers, so the first thing we do is get rid of the cover, get rid of the hinges, and now we've made a super high quality acrylic cover that drops right on top. This is what the cover looks like in place. So it's made out of 6 individual pieces, or actually 2, 4, 5 individual pieces of acrylic, all glued together, and it's got these little great handholds, so it's easy to kind of lift up and you don't get fingerprints all over it. The rest of the setup, I've got a pair of powered speakers from Kef. This is the only thing I'd kick it around. If you're in the market for powered speakers, Technics has just come out with a beautiful set of powered bookshelves. I don't have them right here, so I had to resort to these, but if you wanted to make a system with the absolute least amount of parts, you could totally do so with what you see here. Just a turntable, a DS audio, cartridge with its own Phono preamp, and a pair of speakers. That's all you would need, and it would actually work with Bluetooth as well if you had a phone. And then I've got an assortment of calibration tools I'm going to use. We usually do this at the shop, but I am not there. I'm doing this from my place in Miami. So I've got an assembly of tools that gets me to the 95% mark. Right? I've got a great Wiley tractor, an oscilloscope, a digital scale, my phasgometer that helps with the azimuth, and a couple of gauges and things. Also in question here, obviously the DS audio setup with a super high quality DS audio head shell. We've been selling these on the Techniques for some time now. It's a beautiful piece. Sitting over here is the DS audio ionizer. This removes static from the records. I'm going to do a separate video on this because this is definitely worth diving a little deeper into. And lastly, I've got the DS audio eccentricity detector analyzer, also a super cool and innovative product, and I'm going to do a deep dive with that in a subsequent video as well. Now, calibrating a turntable is a complicated matter. I'm not going to dive super deep in this video. I'm going to kind of go over the generic or the general steps to achieve a good calibration. The more time, the more effort you put into it, the better tools you've got, the better is going to be the result. Generally, most folks at home can get the systems working to about, is my estimation, about 80–85% using basic stuff. To get it to 100%, it takes quite a bit, and we've got a great kit in the shop to do so. And most people opt in for our 12-step calibration process when they buy a turntable from us, because we really refined it specifically to the SL1200s. or the 1300s, really any of the Technics turntables, because they all have the same geometry and calibration steps. Tools I choose to use will depend on what I have on hand and also the cartridge itself. Some cartridges, like the Sumikos, the stylus is extremely visible. It sticks out of the front of the cartridge, and I can get a really good sight and where it drops. On this DS Audio, it's tucked underneath. It's going to be a lot trickier, so I might choose to do things slightly different. The general steps are as follows. We start with using some device to set the overhang, and that's the distance of the cartridge within this direction. I have at the shop a Ficert gauge, which I love. It's super easy to use, and I've modified it so that it locks beautifully into this screw here at the top of the tone arm bearing. I don't have that here. I've got a project one that is similar in design. It's a little trickier to locate, but this is how we're going to set that particular distance. After setting the overhang, we move on to setting the zenith, and that is the rotation of the cartridge in this fashion. That is done by loosening these two screws and essentially rotating the head shell. A simple protractor like this does a decent job at it. It has a mirrored surface that lets you visually see that you're 90 degrees to the surface. And there are 2 points, so you essentially calibrate to this point and then calibrate to the second point over here, and make adjustments as needed and land somewhere in between so that you're as close as you can be on both reference points. Third alignment point that we shoot for is this rotation, which is the sort of lateral rotation of a head shell. There's a set screw on most head shells that allows you to adjust it. There are a few ways of doing it. The first is the rough method, which is using some sort of gauge block as well. We're just going to lay it here and visually level the head shell to these reference lines. At the shop, we do it quite differently. We've got a bunch of electronic equipment. We've got an oscilloscope, we've got an audio analyzer, and we will use those methods. But here we're a little bit limited. So I'm going to eyeball it with this gauge block. This wonderful tool called the Fuzzgometer. This is the original MK1 version. This, in combination with the test record, will allow us to dial it in quite a bit more precisely. Lastly, we set the anti-skate, and that in a Technics is super easy. We've got a dial from 0 to 3. A rule of thumb is you generally match your anti-skate to your tracking force. In this case, it would be 2.1 grams. I'm going to do it a little bit better. I've got an oscilloscope right here, a little battery-powered oscilloscope, and I've got a series of test records that I'm going to use for that purpose. So I'm going to actually see the signal. I'm going to visualize and put a sine wave on the test record, and I'm going to do my anti-skate adjustments. All right, so let's get started. First thing, super impressive. This is a billet aluminum housing for the cartridge. You know, these things are super delicate, so I like to see really high quality packing like this that secures everything in place. So I think we just need a Phillips screwdriver to get into this thing. One thing I tell my clients all the time is to keep the protective cover on as long as humanly possible. That should not come off until you're doing one of two things. You're either putting it down on the record surface to play, or you are setting the tracking force. This really, every other minute of the day, that cartridge protectant should be on. All right, so standard color coding in the back, which I like to see. Nothing like the Koetsus where you have to guess where the wire goes where. So that's a welcome sight. And to remove this, you essentially just peel the back off just slightly. So there's aluminum cantilever. That's what we've got here. We'll try to get a microscope shot for you. And some sort of aluminum bodied. Pretty cool stuff. Now the head shell comes in 2 different flavors. One with captive phono leads, which is what we've got here. You can see these little wires are soldered into the connector, and there's one that has removable ones. I like to avoid as many connections as possible, so we mostly stock this model. It comes with a bunch of screws, so now we're going to go ahead and... What I like to do with these is, so I can get a better shot at the connectors in the back, I like to secure the head shell to the cartridge with 1 screw and just rotate it slightly outward so I can get better access to it, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to pop 1 screw in place. I'm going to go lightly to make sure I don't bottom into any of the internals, and sure enough, it got a great fit. That's the beauty of using the same brand of head shell to cartridges, which is what I try to do. Now the head shell on the Technics is actually a really good head shell as well. It's really hard to beat, especially at $99. So that's been a real success for us as well. Very nicely made. It's got a cast aluminum body, and the only bummer is that the screw for the azimuth, that's this orientation, is located at the bottom. So whenever you want to adjust it, you've got to sort of take the head shell off, make the adjustment, put it back. A bit of a pain. DS Audio has addressed that nicely. They actually have a screw here on the inside. Now, I've always wished it was on the outside, right? Because instead of dealing with a screwdriver here, it certainly is nicer to deal with it on this side. So I'm not sure why DS Audio put the adjustment screw on the left. All right, so I went too far. I put both screws in while I was blabbing. Then I'm going to rotate slightly, and I'm going to use my pliers for this bit. All right, that's it. So next order of business is to put this on the table and set our overhang. We don't have access to a digital scale, which I strongly suggest, guys. This is $35, $40 on Amazon. Invaluable tool. If you don't, what Technics wants you to do is essentially static balance the entire system. So you essentially move the counterweight back and forth until you get a perfect balance, and then you set the graduation to 0, and then you move it to the 2.1 grams. We're not going to do that. We're going to set it using the digital scale. Now they're calling for a tracking force or needle pressure of 2 grams to 2.2 grams, so 2.1 is going to be our target. So now that I've set the overhang, I'm going to dial in the tracking force a bit better, and on a Technics, super easy. We just use this rotation wheel here in the back. So this little silver box that comes with the DS Audio setup is several things. It's a power supply, because that cartridge is in fact powered. We're going to be sending some voltages through the Phono cables to electrify or energize the internal electronics. It's also a Phono preamp or an equalizer. If you're not aware, Phono signals, the way records are created, have to get equalized to sound good. There are a bunch of equalization curves, and that process has to be done somewhere. It's usually built into the Phono preamp on either a Phono preamp or an integrated amplifier or a preamp. DS Audio, because we're doing many other things, and because of the technology of the optical technology involved, it has to be a dedicated box from them. And there are some alternatives I'll cover later. But this is it. This powers it. It does equalization. So the connection from this to your equipment is going to be super easy. Just like a CD player or a streamer, it's going to go line level output. You don't need to have a Phono input on your preamp to use this combination, which is a really nice savings if you don't have one already. The back is as simple as it gets. We've got an AC power adapter with a little fuse holder here, IEC removable, so you could supply your own cables if you wanted. We've got the input on the left with a grounding tab, so the tone arm cable will get grounded to this piece. And then we've got outputs here. Now notice there's no ground from here to your preamp because you're connected to this like a line level source, so there's no need to ground this necessarily to your preamplifier. Because this is in fact your Phono preamp, we've got a switch here that has a misleading label. It's labeled output 1 and output 2. What it really is just a rumble filter, subsonic filter at around 20 hertz that keeps your woofers from dancing. I don't know if you've seen it, but when you turn up the volume on a record player and your speakers are too close to the system, the woofers will start sort of vibrating in and out. That's a sort of a feedback loop that is created between the cartridge and the speakers. So this essentially is a filter that lets you eliminate that feedback. Rumble filter is also helpful if you've got a record that has a slight warp to it. As the needle goes up and down, it will create a load and make your woofers work way too hard. So that rumble filter will help remove that. So we've gone through calibration. We've explained where the connections are. Now let's go ahead and hook it up and fire this up for the first time. So this is the leads coming from the turntable, and I want to show you these WBT connectors that we spec on the Kimber cable, the Taxi U cable that we sell with most Techniques. These are great connectors because they lock in place. You essentially align the body of the outside with the gold connector, so it's just protruding, and you push it into place. And as soon as you do that, then you're able to lock it, which creates a really nice friction fit. Absolutely lovely. And then we also need the ground wire, of course. Now on the other side, we're going to go right to the back of the line level input on our powered speakers. All right, here we go. We're all powered up. As you can see, the cartridge has illuminated, and so has the light here on the Phono preamp. So we know we've got a working system. Before I put something on, I did notice you guys that almost 75–80% of you guys are not subscribed. So I appreciate you watching, but would really help me kind of keep this channel alive and active would be if you were to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. It would really mean a lot to me in terms of promoting. So please, guys, I encourage you, if you like the videos and you appreciate them, please do subscribe. All right, we've got first light here. We've got our first record player. I got some Ben Webster spinning. One of the sweet things about this system, because it is in fact a system, right? We've got a Phono preamp integrated with a cartridge, is the fact that there are no settings. There's really, you don't have to mess around with any gain settings or loading and capacitance, absolutely nothing. This box knows exactly what's happening. So in terms of setup, man, super sweet. The thing that is immediately apparent is the low noise floor. You know, we ship hundreds of these Technics turntable, and I spent a lot of time working with clients on getting their systems, specifically in the moving coil cartridges, to have as little noise as possible. And it's tricky. It requires some trial and error, playing with grounding, playing with gain, settings on the preamp. You name it. It can be a bit complex, and you know, DS Audio with this system essentially has eliminated that completely. I can turn this super high with the arm up in the air. I can turn the volume all the way up, and it's, you know, max out the gain, and there is no audible hiss over the speakers, and that is a welcome thing. And that's really what I was hoping from this system, is to essentially, you know, improve clarity and improve signature of the music with, you know, by eliminating any sort of background noise. It makes total sense. You know, we're not transmitting an incredibly low voltage signal from the cartridge all the way through the tone arm to a Phono preamp. You know, we're doing some light measurements with LEDs and reflective surfaces within the head shell, and then sending an absolute signal to the Phono equalizer. So, as anticipated, dead quiet system. You saw me a bit earlier, center of the record, using this super nifty device, also from DS Audio. As mentioned, we'll do a separate video on this, as well as the ionizer that removes static from records. Really cool stuff. I love to see this sort of innovation in the analog world. All right, that wraps it up for this setup. As mentioned, this is my temporary setup just for calibrating this. I am going to now move it over to my living room system, which is a Technics Sonos Fiber combination. And by the way, I did a video on that system. I'll link that below. Did it about a few weeks ago if you want to know more about it. All right, today we're going to listen to Johnny Hartman. I Just Dropped By to Say Hello is the name of the album. And Stairway to the Stars is on B-side, track 2.
to the stars and climb that stairway to the stars with love beside us to fill the night with a song. As we go drifting along, can we sail away on a lazy daisy pedal high over the rim of the hill? Can we sail away on a little dream and settle high on the crest of a thrill? A stairway to the stars, a lovely stairway to the stars. It would be heaven to climb to heaven with you.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed the song. I know YouTube is not the ideal format for conveying how things sound, but I know a lot of you don't have access to stores or places you can hear stuff, so it's better than nothing, I would say. In conclusion, the DS Audio has been a stellar performer, super easy to set up, and wow, does it sound good, it really does. The noise floor is barely detectable. I can turn up the gain on the integrated amp 3/4 of the way, and I still cannot hear a single bit of hiss over the speakers, which makes room for the music. It makes room for all the other beautiful things to shine through. If you've struggled in the past setting up a moving coil cartridge with hum and interference, this is certainly going to be the easiest route. So in conclusion, kudos to DS Audio for continuing to develop the optical cartridge. It's a really special technology, and probably the direction the entire vinyl industry would have gone had there not been the interruption of the CD player as the vinyl was evolving. And I kind of wonder what we'd have today if that hadn't happened. You know, what sort of level would have taken the optical cartridge. For sure, we would have had a ton of preamps and phono sections with the optical capabilities already built in. Right now we are limited to 7 or 8, but of course, you know, the little box solves that problem. If you found this video informative, and I do ask you please to subscribe and like to our channel. It helps sort of stay motivated and keep these videos coming your way. And leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of the setup. What kind of cartridge are you using with your SL1200, and what you'd like to see next. Fernando from SkyFi Audio, thanks for watching.